There's a huge theory that's been given a lot of legs as a result of this 3-episode premiere of Season 3 of Bad Batch, and we're going to talk about all of it here today. My name is Jeremy. Welcome to the Force Fandom, where I love to talk all things Star Wars, and I'm going to give you my sense, my feeling, my review, if you will, of the first 3 episodes of Bad Batch, which premiered just today. Now, if you're looking for a full in-detail breakdown, those are everywhere all over YouTube, but I just want to give you some of my thoughts, what I loved about the episode, some of the things I wish they had done a little bit better, and overall, I really am intrigued by what has been teased at the very end, and we'll get to that at the end. Everything starts with episode 1 entitled Confined, where we find Crosshair and Omega now in jail, all at Mount Tantus in a lab run by Hemlock. And so these are some of the things picking up on the storylines right where we left off, what some of the trailers have already teased out with the tension between Omega and Crosshair and some of the conversations that they're having. And I thought that dynamic played really well in this episode. However, after the interview that Michelle Ang did on StarWars.com that recently dropped, I kind of went into this episode thinking it would be faster paced, thinking that things were going to come at a much quicker clip than we got. I don't think that this was a very action-packed episode. This wasn't a very fast-moving episode, but I still think it was really good. The visuals and the music worked perfectly together to give this eerie feel to Tantus, this ominous understanding of where they are, that this lab constructed, there's no way out, there's no escaping, it's quite dangerous if you leave. I think the way that this was done at the very beginning set the whole tone for the episode, knowing that escape is near impossible. And we see Omega throughout this episode trying to find anything to connect with. It's that connection that she's missing more than anything, especially in the wake of losing Tech, losing Hunter, and losing Wrecker, being here in a cell by herself. She's trying to connect with Crosshair, but that's not happening. So what does she do? She makes a doll. She makes a friend in this lurker animal that now is domesticated, and she ends up letting loose, and that comes back later, which I think is really great. Just showing her desire for connection in any place she can find it, and her willingness to sacrifice for those she cares about. There was one line that put this all into perspective, this tension of relationship, that I thought really built the stage and set the scene really well. It's when she was talking with Crosshair, and Crosshair said this: "Don't risk anything for me, I belong here." And then Omega responds, "None of us belong here." And I think in this episode, it really gives clarity to why Crosshair has been giving the cold shoulder to Omega this entire time. He feels that the punishment he's getting is deserved, that what he's done, he cannot come back from. And even more than that, this is how he knows to protect Omega so that she doesn't get attached, so that she doesn't take a risk like she did with Batcher for Crosshair, so that if she can get out, if she can escape, that she should just go and do that. But that's just the problem. What Omega really needs, and has always needed, is a family. And to her, Crosshair is still family. I really think a lot of this goes back to the sacrifice that Tech made for the crew that's had a deep impact on Omega. That once you see that sacrifice, you have a deeper understanding of what love is. That true love, like if you really love someone and care for them, what do? You sacrifice on their behalf. And so this is how Omega is showing to Crosshair that he is still loved by that sacrifice, that she's going to risk everything to get him out, even though it might make things harder for herself. I think it's deep character development like this which makes Bad Batch so intriguing. Then we get episode 2 that jumps over to Hunter and Wrecker, who are doing anything they can to get to Omega by being bounty hunters essentially, and they end up with Lady Durand in this weird scene that kind of has a lot of connections, or it gave me the feeling of being back in Jabba's palace. But they're doing everything they can to get to Omega. We saw at the end of the first episode that it's been just about 159 days, so just over 5 months that Omega has been in captivity, and it's been a non-stop gruel. We've jumped ahead those 5 months, but you can imagine that every single day Hunter has been pushing and pushing to try and find where to go. This is even furthered in the episode when he's tasked by Wrecker, who's now the voice of like patience and calm, which is a whole different kind of shift. But he's trying to say, hey, let's wait for Rex, let's wait for Echo, and then we'll go. And he's saying, no, they're not spending another day in that place. And the whole episode then shifts. And we're reintroduced to some clones that we saw at the end of season 1, who are getting off Kamino, who now have escaped this lab as it was bombarded and destroyed because everything went wrong. They designed something, they built something, the Empire did, and it was not controllable, so they had to just destroy the planet. Kind of is on point for what we'd imagine. I will say I wasn't sure about this episode until it got to the ending. I was kind of worried that these guys were going to join forces with Hunter and Wrecker, and we were just going to keep adding to the crew. But instead, we get a real look into the character development of Hunter. And I think when you look at this episode in that light, it gives a whole different perspective. We see Hunter, after going through everything, first, no one questions why they were so ready with the ship to save them. Like, well, how did you get in here? Wait, you hot-wired the whole thing? Like, there's no questions asked. Kind of was bummed about that. Wanted to see a little bit of tough love from Wrecker and Hunter once they had been saved. But regardless, they're saved. They're having this conversation about saying they're going to drop them off somewhere safe. And we get a line from Hunter that I think shows where his character has been headed. And it comes back to something that was talked about in the previous season. This idea of no longer needing to be a soldier. Hunter tells these kids that they can go be something different, but while knowing it's kind of too late for him. I think it's something he desires, it's something he wants, but honestly, I don't think that's how this is going to go. I don't see there being a happily ever after where everyone sits down and rests and relax. No, that's not how this season is going to go. I think it's going to get darker and more intense, but just this tension of where Hunter wants to be and him not being able to get there, it builds a really interesting dynamic that's going to be a tension for this character, I think, throughout the whole season. It feels like it's the future he wants, but isn't going to get. And then the last episode, we hop back over to Tantus, back to the lab, where the foreshadowed new visitor that's coming is for sure what we kind of thought. It's the Emperor. The Emperor is coming to the lab to check everything out. And Nala Se tells Omega, you have to leave now. That today is the day, I can't protect you anymore. Now, this felt more like a plot device than an actual reason. The episode ends with this huge cliffhanger that we've kind of been wondering about, that with this project being mentioned, Project Necromancer. Project Necromancer, if you remember, also was mentioned in season 3 of The Mandalorian, with all of the cloning that was happening there, trying to clone other Force sensitives to make Force clones. That's what's happening here. Now, that's 30 years after what's happening today, so we kind of know where it's headed. But that connection is really interesting because it's Omega's blood that makes it all work. So what does that mean? That means that the metachlorian count, the M count, even though they don't want to say the word, the M count is being transferred from one blood to the other without any degradation, like a photocopy that gets made again and again and again, where it gets worse each time. This is staying the same. And that hasn't been happening with any of the clones except for Omega. And so does that mean some of the theories that were thought about all the way back in season 1, because we don't know the abilities of Omega, is she Force sensitive? Is she a clone that has a high metachlorian count? Now, I don't think this means we're going to get Omega using the Force. I think that would be off-brand and completely outside the scope of the show, and I really hope they don't do that. But what this does mean is it brings up a really interesting thought as to why and how. I think the clearest example, and maybe we'll get flashbacks of why this has happened, maybe Nala Se will talk about this, but my best theory is you're in a lab where cloning is happening and all kinds of different cloning experiments happen. And it isn't that hard to think, well, what would happen if we put metachlorians in with this clone? I also find it really interesting that Hunter and Wrecker are doing everything they can to get Omega back, but they even mention in this episode that their real goal is to join Rex and to join Echo and do more for the clones that are being hurt and put into prison and killed all throughout the galaxy. But it's in this one mission that the whole galaxy actually holds together, that by saving Omega and keeping Omega away from the Empire, they're actually undermining the very thing that would cause more death in the galaxy than anything else, because it would allow the Emperor to replicate himself without any loss of force ability, of power, or anything else. And that is a scary thought. So I think it's really intriguing to have that under plot line. As Omega now has escaped, the real thing is to keep her away, and that's going to be the thing that actually saves the galaxy. I really enjoyed these episodes. If you can't tell, I thought they were great. Again, some minor things I would tweak here or there that I would just enjoy more, but overall I think they were well done. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and if this video was entertaining and you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like on the way out. I greatly appreciate it. Remember, the Force will be with you always. Oh, and if you want to check out one of my other videos, right here, check that one out. YouTube thinks you'll like it. I think you will too. And I'll catch you on the next one.